You're listening to the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski,
featuring attorney, guest, and former felony prosecutor Eric Faddis.
We got the list of questions that Ann Taylor was throwing out into Moscow, trying to find out if the jury pool was too tainted. But in the process of that, did she taint the jury pool? That's kind of the question, with questions like, have you read, seen, or heard if Bryan Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania, or found a knife sheath on the bed next to one of the victims? Or how about when the knife sheath was later matched to Bryan Kohberger? And the list goes on, talking about his car, talking about relationships, talking about all sorts of things that really go deep into this case. Joining me to discuss, Eric Faddis, former prosecutor and defense attorney. Eric, I'm not a legal expert by any means, but is something like this common? Is it practiced regularly, asking questions like this of potential jurors?
It's pretty unorthodox to do this before the jurors have even been brought into the courthouse.
Yeah.
That's typically when you do the questioning. But in my appraisal, this is pretty uncommon. I don't know that I've ever seen it in Colorado anyway.
Why did she do this? Because, I mean, there's a lot of directions this could really go. But yeah, I mean, these seem like questions you'd ask once you're interviewing potential jurors, but to throw it out there and then have the argument that kind of counteracts it of, well, I'm just seeing if they're tainted, like you're tainting them by asking these questions.
Yeah, totally. So I think that there is absolutely an ulterior motive behind this. The defense wants to file, and I think has filed a motion to change venue, that they want to take it out of where it is presently. So what they did was they contacted everyone in the prospective jury pool, or a lot of people, and really kind of planted some seeds, and the way they asked the questions kind of assumes that those facts are true and have been established.
And that's the weird part about this. This is not, if you're defending the guy, you're pointing out like pretty much everything the prosecution is going to point out. And it only went out to 400 people, but only 400 in a population of 20,000 some. And those 400 people that live there, they got friends, they got family, that's going to spread out to at least 10 more people beyond the 400 per person. If you didn't pay much attention to this case, now you certainly are.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that they pose the questions are really problematic for their own client. I think they're trying to bank on some negative responses from these potential jurors and then bring that to the court and say, hey, look, everybody hates Bryan Kohberger, but maybe that's the case because of how the questions were posed and the way that these surveys were conducted.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, what was the thought process here? This just seems really, really reckless. If you're going to take this back to the court and say, here's what people are saying about Bryan Kohberger. Okay, well, how did you get this information? What did you ask them? It's not like the judge wasn't going to find these questions or read this at some point in time. I don't know. I mean, I'm really trying to run this through my mind 50 different ways. And there isn't a whole lot that makes a lot of logical sense in terms of defending Bryan Kohberger, and this is who it's coming from.
Yeah, Tony, I think reckless is totally the right word here because, they're going to go to the judge and say, hey, all these people have a negative impression of Bryan Kohberger, which they've kind of created through this survey. And what if the judge says, hey, based on how this went down, I'm not changing venues? Then they're left with all of these jury pool folks who already have kind of a contaminated way of thinking about this case that is not favorable to their own client, Bryan Kohberger.
I mean, how do you think the judge is going to react to this once there's another hearing?
At least in Colorado, it would be problematic. There are criminal laws against jury tampering. And so, there hasn't been a jury seated yet, but you can't take measures to influence the opinion of a prospective juror. And so I think the judge might not be too kind with how he addresses the defense and what they've done.
I mean, he was already shocked that this was even happening. And now we see the details of what was happening. I imagine he's going to be even more shocked. Could there be repercussions for Ann Taylor on this? I mean, how far could that potentially go?
Yeah, I mean, there's this principle that, neither side really gets to talk to jurors without the other side being present and sort of, giving this influence upon jurors that's usually impermissible. And so I think a judge is going to look at this with a real skeptical eye. And you never know, there could be sanctions imposed against defense for overstepping their bounds here.
When we say sanctions, what exactly do you mean by that? And how would that affect the trial?
So the judge often has discretion to impose a number of different consequences, as small as a verbal admonishment saying, hey, don't do that. And it can get as severe as kicking the attorney off the case. And so, I don't think that they're going to go to the most extreme type of sanction, but there absolutely could be some repercussions for the defense here that are going to be negative to Kohberger.
Want to listen ad-free? Want advanced access to all of our interviews before anyone else?
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
You get every episode commercial-free.
So you can binge on true crime
until you can binge no more.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts now, or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast next.